that in just a couple minutes. If this is your first time, I would just want to let you know that Together for Timnath, if you don't know, has a mission to advance Timnath's downtown district as the heart of the greater Timnath community by promoting community-oriented economic, cultural, and social development, advocating as a unified and influential voice for downtown, and fostering an active, informed, and connected community through Timnath. And really our vision is to see Old Town or downtown of Timnath become like the hub of the whole town of Timnath, where people can gather, a third space that they can come for business, for pleasure, for bringing families together, for bringing neighbors together. And so by being here tonight, you're kind of helping us with that mission, by just us being together. For the benefit of those who couldn't be here tonight, for whatever reason, we're recording this event, and we'll be posting it on Together for Timnath's YouTube page so that they can view it later. And if you're not following us on social media, then you can do that. But we want to thank folks who will be viewing later, and any of you who continue to support Together for Timnath's work financially or through other means. We need that support. We're always grateful for it. And we also want to make sure that you know about the State of the Town address. That's going to be happening on February 25th at 6 p.m. here. You can come here to the State of the Town. You'll also be able to view it, a live stream on the town website. So you can check that out on February 25th. I don't think there are any other announcements, right? So let's get into our conversation tonight. Our guests are Scott Robinson, who is the Public Works Director for Timnath. Oh, flipped it, sorry. That's right. Community Director for Timnath. Development Director. CU Boulder and Wyoming grad, right? Certified Planner with the American Planning Association, which I don't know what that is, but it sounds really cool. Maybe you can help us know what that is. And 20 plus years of experience in community planning. So Scott, thank you for being here. And then also Justin Stone, he is actually the Public Works Director of Timnath, CSU grad, who comes with years of experience and also having served previously in Sterling and Loveland and now here in Timnath. Thank you so much. So we prepared a few questions just to kind of hear from Justin, from Scott, and we also want to hear from you. There were question cards when you came in. If you want to write down a question, and we can field it here. This is also a really small event tonight, so we might just have the opportunity to just hear directly from you, rather than collecting all of those questions. But there'll be a couple times in our conversation where we'll just take a break and I'll ask any questions from the floor. As always, Together for Timnath is an organization that seeks to support civil civic engagement, and so we always ask for your respect for our panelists. So to start, just to kind of your hands right toss, love to know just a little bit more about both of you, telling us about yourself, your path to becoming Timnath's first in-house Public Works Director and Community Development Director. Why Public Works? Why Community Development? Why Timnath? Justin, why don't we start with you?
Sure. So I'm a Colorado native. I was born and raised in Sterling, Colorado, which is about 100 miles east of here. Always liked to work with things, build things, deconstruct, blow up things. So CSU civil engineering was a passion that I wanted to do. So I got my bachelor's of science in civil engineering. After I did that, I went out with my wife to the city of Los Angeles and worked for the city of Los Angeles, which was a culture shock for me and my wife and our newly born son. So we were hoping to get back to the area where I could apply my skills. And luckily enough, the city engineer job for the city of Sterling came up, which was a miracle. So I was successful to do that, which was my hometown. I really enjoyed the public service, giving back to my community. That's one of the things I like public service and working in a public service field is giving back to the community. Worked there for 13 years. Also did other roles. So when I got hired, one of the interview questions was, do you know about city planning? And I told them yes. So after they hired me, what they told me is, you're not only the city engineer, you're a city planner. So I've also dealt a little bit on the city planning side, dabbled in there. So helped me with my other side of my brain, kind of help it develop. So after 13 years, we wanted to move back to the Front Range. Family, kids were a little bit older. So then I landed at the city of Loveland, did various roles over there too. At the end of it, I managed their planning, their transportation planning, development policy group. And then we moved to Timnath actually at the end of the year 2020, which most of you know, that was about the time of COVID. So we closed on our house like the end of 19, and then year 20 came around, and so we were able to kind of just work from home, commute for a year or two. We just loved Timnath. We just loved the area. I've always liked Fort Collins. So this was our home, like retirement home, empty nesters home that we lived in. And I saw the town growing. I had a feeling that at some point maybe they were going to need, that they had a contract with TSC Consulting, and Don was acting, or the public works director. I just had a feeling it was keeping my eye out to, we would love to give back to the town I lived in. So that came to fruition just about a year and a half ago. So again, was blessed to be able to work for a town I live in and just really, really enjoy it. So kind of the life full circle, and really thankful to be here and serve the community.
First of all, Jonathan, thanks for inviting me here tonight. Appreciate the opportunity to have a conversation with everybody. My background is maybe a little bit different. Went to the University of Colorado Boulder, grew up in Lakewood, and I majored in biology and political science. At the time, I thought I wanted to go work for the Environmental Protection Agency. That wasn't a major for that. Worked in a research lab for maybe 10 years. My boss thought I should go to graduate school. I was this close to going to pharmacy school, which I didn't. Took a little career change. Worked for a friend of mine in wholesale plumbing. Pretty drastic change, but it was really good exposure. Not only to learn every pipe, any size you could think of, sprinkler, what have you, but it also gave me a good dose of the private sector and understanding private sector work from previously being in public sector. And then my brother-in-law is an architect. He was talking to me and really got me interested in my skill sets. He's like, you know, you should look at planning. That's a pretty good background. My wife got her first job at the University of Wyoming, and they had a urban planning degree. Of all places, Wyoming had a planning degree they offered there, so I got my master's degree in planning. We relocated to Bloomington, Indiana, where I had my first planning job. I worked there for about 20 years, worked my way up with that department. Jonathan mentioned AICP, so the American Institute of Certified Planners. There's a national organization, each state has membership organizations, just like Justin. Engineers have a PE, they have their certifications. Planners can get that too. There's a test that we can take, and you have to maintain your credentials by going to webinars and training and what have you. So that's what AICP is. So that's how I kind of got my background in planning. I would say that's probably very true for a lot of planners, is they have kind of a diverse background of geography, social sciences, hard sciences, and but I think all of us are very civic-minded and want to kind of give back to our community. And what brought me here, my wife and I just recently became empty nesters, so I always wanted to relocate back to Colorado. Saw this opportunity, and it was really a great opportunity. I've been here, I'll be here a year come March 1st, so I'm just about to my 1-year anniversary. It's a really great community, and I'm learning a lot about it.
Thank you. Thank you. So, Pastor, I can't tell you how many times I've heard the joke, oh, must be nice to only work on Sundays, right? Because people don't know what I do, except on Sundays. And I don't know what either of you do, actually. I know your title, but I don't actually know what you do when you come here on a Monday or Tuesday or Wednesday. So I'm guessing I might not be the only person here that doesn't have a lot of background in that. What are your primary roles? either of you can take that to start.
I'll start first. Great question. And so the community development department is broken up into a couple of divisions. So one division is a building services division. So anytime a builder, even a homeowner, needs a permit to do something like a solar panel or a garage addition or a new garage from their house or a brand new house that they're going to build, you get a building permit. So our department administers building permits. We do have a third party that does the inspections, safe built, so they contract with the town that they actually do the building inspection. But what the building department does is they review the applications to make sure that they're consistent with the zoning and setbacks and what have you for each of the projects being built with that. So they administer that program. The other part of our department is planning services, and so that's the department where most people are familiar with planning in the sense of what new projects come into town. You might read in the paper or you hear at the town council. So all the subdivisions that are being built go through the planning department where they go through various steps through approval. There's often public engagement opportunities. Sometimes there's neighborhood meetings depending on what the proposal is. These often have to get approved both at the planning commission, which is a resident volunteer board. I kind of view them as my board of directors. Ultimately goes to the town council, which are elected by our residents. So that's typically what the department does. So we administer both the building code requirements of structures, and then we approve new projects coming into town. So with Ladera, the commercial area, work very closely with them. We also administer the zoning code. If you really want to get into the weeds, it's about a 400, 500-page document with lots of language. If I started talking like a planner, you'll all start falling asleep. But we have to administer that. We work with the developers coming in to make sure that they meet the code. And we try to work with them so that they understand what the requirements are. Also work with them to understand what the process is to get these approvals made. At the same time, we like to update our codes to make sure they're relevant. So the comprehensive plan, Parks is just doing their Parks and Open Space plan. Justin, Public Works does their transportation plan. That helps us anticipate growth and the changes we need to anticipate for this very significant. That's kind of it in a big nutshell. Everybody understands that we actually have a plan commissioner sitting in the audience, so happy using it. Justin, if you want to. Sure.
Yeah, so thanks for the question, and thanks for everybody coming out. So Public Works is like one of those that kind of works in the background a lot of times. We don't get all the exposure, so it's good to kind of let you know what service we provide. So basically, I lead and manage the department that provides the public or citizens with works that makes everybody's life, quality of life better. So when we talk about works, it's the same thing as infrastructure. It's some of the things we talk about roads. Like today, you had to use a road or bike lanes or sidewalks as part of the infrastructure to get to here to be able to meet. The other thing we provide is storm sewer services. So when it rains, I want to make sure that people don't get flooded. It gets conveyed back to the river in the natural, and also a good quality, the quality of the water is still pretty good when it gets back to the river, so we don't affect the environment. The other things we do is traffic. Part of the roads is the traffic like operations, which would be like the signals, signage that you get, or even striping. So we're broken down into two different groups. There's the engineering group. I have some engineers that help with. We work with Scott and his group on the planning. Like he had mentioned, we do a transportation master plan that we predict where the roads need to be built, when do they need to be widened, when do we need to do, signals, those kinds of things, or even like a stormwater master plan. We're looking at that actually kicking it off maybe this year because the last one was done in 2018. And then we take that planning and then we actually do design. We go ahead and design the different roads or different infrastructure. And then we also then construct it, as you can see, like with Timnath corporate project that's being constructed right now. And then not only that, it's like cradle to grave, then we also maintain it. So we don't just build it, we gotta make sure that it's kept up, maintained. Part of the maintenance too is like the summer, especially in 25. I know in 2024 it didn't snow much, and I knew we were gonna get hit, but this year's been pretty tough as far as the snow. So we go out there and then also remove the snow. That way it makes your commute safe. So those are the big things we do. I'm trying to think. Also, we do public buildings. So like this building here, we help manage it. Right now, we were just going through some upstairs, reconfiguring it a little bit, especially as the town's grown and hired new people like Scott and I, repurposed some of the spaces and made improvements to it. And then also where I'm at is at 4800 Goodman, which is where you usually drop off your voter stuff, which, you know, they change next voting cycle, but that's the building where most of the operations, equipment like the snow plows, and that's where it happens. So that's pretty much what we do.
So both of you have formerly worked in larger, more established communities. How has the transition been to a town that's rapidly transforming from kind of a small agricultural town to this something less defined, right? Rapid population growth. What's it like to jump in the midst of that, or the transition?
Yeah, so I've had experience in all that. So like, city of Los Angeles was a big city, one of the biggest cities in the area. What I didn't like about that is you're defined, your roles are more specific, you don't get to see the big picture. So like when I was at the city of Sterling, smaller town, didn't have the much growth pressure as it is here. It had to be a jack of all trades. Like I said, I had to be the city planner, also the engineer there. So it gave me a good background in all the different facilities. And it was a lot of other functions. It was a full service community, which is a little bit different here. So it also included water, sewer, which here it's more districts. We had the roads. We also had stormwater, so that's similar. We had facilities which are similar. We actually had an airport in Sterling that Timnath. There is an airport, as you know. It's the Woodward Governor has a little private airport there. And see what else. The other thing we do is like vehicles, make sure our vehicle fleet is up to speed. So that's no different here. And then Loveland was like a community that was a little bit in between, well not in between, still smaller size, but not as small as Loveland. And that one did have a lot of growth, so that's where I have a lot of experience in dealing with growth, making sure to help manage that so the town or the city does not get pretty much so the development pays its way, so then the existing citizens don't have to foot the bill, or their quality of life goes down just because of the extra growth. So it's trying to manage it, make sure your quality of life does not deteriorate as the town grows. So that's one thing with Timnath here is even though it's a small town, I get a test. I was a little bit surprised on how active or how much is going on here. So I was thinking it was more like Sterling, which was a little bit more quiet, farming town, didn't have much going on. But I've been as busy, if not busier, I think, with development and everything as Loveland. So even as a small town, a lot's going on here, which kind of surprised me. So lots happening, so there's a lot to keep up with.
That's a great question, by the way. Compare and contrast my job. So I think a lot of similarities between Justin and I is, big takeaway is, I haven't been here a year yet, but I'd say that Timnath is way more complicated than I thought it would be. Indiana and Colorado are different. The former government that I worked in Bloomington and here are different, so not to get too deep into the weeds, but Bloomington was a strong mayor, so I was appointed by the mayor in Bloomington. This is a town manager, so it's a different form of government. So that's a little bit more protected here, working for a town manager than a strong mayor. But that's one difference between the two communities. Indiana doesn't. All their revenues are basically flat, so they don't get to do local sales tax. Property tax is about the same. They do a little bit of a local income tax, but here the revenues, a lot of towns really thrive on sales tax. And so, as you all know, a lot of the interchanges are great opportunities for towns, especially like Timnath, to capture revenue from sales tax. So that's a very different model that I'm not used to coming from Indiana, where we were very limited on the revenues, mostly largely relied on property tax. That's not the case for Timnath. We don't rely very much at all on property tax. If you look at your tax bills, it's actually a very small percentage which generates the revenue for the town. So it's a different way of thinking of how do you manage growth compared to Bloomington. The other big difference is Bloomington's home of Indiana University, so our population is very similar to Fort Collins. Almost half or even more than half the population are students. And so a lot of my job at Bloomington is how do you manage students and the impact students have on the community. So the types of development are much different than what we see here. So there, the developments are large apartment buildings and rental units, and how do we kind of maintain that balance between owner-occupied and rental. So that was a lot of our energy was focused on that. And here, we're not Fort Collins, here we're largely residential, owner-occupied, and not a lot of apartments coming into Timnath yet, but so I think those are some of the bigger differences. But I think, again, one of the big takeaways is that I kind of knew that there was going to be different types of development that we'd be looking at, like large subdivisions, where Bloomington, in my 20-some years, we probably did 2 subdivisions. Everything was redevelopment, so it's a much different type of project that we reviewed. And here, we're looking at very large subdivisions coming in, so it's a much different type of development review, coordination, new roads being built, being funded in a completely different way than
Let's say some specific, more specific work questions, I guess, for each of you, and also the Old Town specific in some ways. So, Scott, tell us a little about Timnath's Old Town Steering Committee. In case folks don't know, what is the charge from the town council for this? What can we expect from it? What's the time frame?
Yeah, thanks, Jonathan. So this was kind of born out of the listening session that Together for Timnath held last summer, I believe, is when that started. And so really, I think those listening sessions identified and coalesced some of the needs and desires of the community in Old Town. Our staff presented some of the findings from that listening session to the town council, and the idea was we needed to create a steering committee to help identify, prioritize some of those issues. And the charge is really based on, the main one is creating a Main Street organization. Currently, we're an affiliate member of the Main Street program. What that program focuses on, there's some areas about the design of your downtown, events and promotions, how do you get businesses going in your downtown areas. And so one of the things that will really help Timnath in the Old Town is becoming a full Main Street organization. There's different models out there, and so one of the charges of this committee is to recommend what's the best way to move forward to establish a Main Street program for Timnath. The others are just looking at the goals of the comprehensive plan that were identified in there to further fulfill those ambitions. So the artisan district, making the downtown Main Street more walkable and attractive, and there's some goals there. There are 11 committee members. 5 of them are positions within the town, but Eston is one of them. And then there are 6 resident people who are on that committee. We meet the first and third Monday of every month, but we've kind of been off because of some holidays. So we only have about 5 meetings right now to this point. Their plan is to present their findings or recommendations to town council in, I think, March 25th, about the recommendation on how to create a Main Street organization. So that's one of the milestones that we're moving forward with on that, or they are moving forward with on that.
I'll have a follow-up question in a little bit, but let me jump to Justin here. So just when you think about infrastructure earlier. How would you compare the town's responsibility for infrastructure and maintenance of Old Town versus newer neighborhoods that have metro districts, HOAs? How do those responsibilities get shared or not?
Yeah, so as far as infrastructure, as far as between the metro districts and Old Town, it's very similar because metro districts usually, after they construct it, inspect it, actually the main roads they turn over to the town or the town gateway. So those go back just like downtown streets. Of course, there's unique. Each little area is a little bit unique. Of course, Old Town's a little bit older, so some of the infrastructure there that maybe we don't maintain, we coordinate with is like the water, sewer lines. But I think it was maybe it was a decade ago that a lot of the infrastructure in Old Town, like the curb gutter, some of the storm sewer, was redone. So I think Timnath is in a good place from other places that I've looked at. I know when I was in Sterling, we did do some Main Street improvements as far as the street, also replacing the water lines. I know Loveland is going through that right now. Actually, at their council, they're trying to approve, I think it's like $20 or $30 million for infrastructure improvements for the city of Loveland, which a lot of those roads, I know they were old concrete that are at least 100 years old, and a lot of the infrastructure pipes and stuff that needed to replace. From my experience, I think Timnath is actually in a good spot. But we cater to all subdivisions. One of the big challenges I think for Timnath is because it's new, people kind of get complacent and think, okay, it's brand new, we don't have to save up, we don't have to start maintaining. So one of the big things that I saw that was needed was a pavement management program and an asset management program to kind of track. Because if you don't measure what you're managing, you're not managing things. You don't know when to do different things. So even though it's new, we need to keep on top of it early. The earlier we do maintenance, it's going to save the town, down the road instead of waiting until everything crumbles and then you got to replace everything. So that's one of the big initiatives we're doing. So not only in Old Town, but even some of the new subdivisions, we want to keep up with it, like certain surface treatments and so forth. And also that way your road is a lot smoother and better, than a bunch of potholes and stuff like that. That saves us on the back end. So yeah, downtowns are a little bit unique because of the grid system. Also the alleys, and also it's a little bit more tighter, more dense. You have older buildings you have to work around and stuff like that. So there's a little bit of uniqueness between Old Town and the rest of the community. But just from my assessment over the year and a half, I think the town is in a good position. We just have to make sure we're proactive and keep it maintained.
Similar question for you, Scott, but in the area of public amenities. Unlike newer developments, Old Town has no parks, trails, or public gathering spaces. What do you think could or should be done about that?
Well, I'm going to rewind a little bit if I could follow on Justin's and kind of like compare and contrast.
Yeah.
Again, Bloomington, they celebrated their 200th anniversary. Timnath is actually very old, which is the thing I was surprised about when I got here. But there are a lot of similarities in regards to the age of subdivisions. Bloomington did not have a lot of, in fact, there was no metro districts in Indiana. I don't think they were allowed in Indiana. They do have some HOAs, but things that I think kind of speaking to what Justin said, being mindful of the future of those improvements, because what happened a lot in Bloomington is HOAs went defunct, and they would often come to the town saying, hey, we don't have any money, please fix our street. I'm like, well, no, it's a private street. And so we had a lot of challenges going back and trying to put in sidewalks, working with some subdivisions and neighborhoods and dealing with that. Not the same as the downtown area, but very similar. And then some of the infrastructure, sewer and water, which we don't, our districts take care of here, but those are some of the main things that we were challenged with some of the older neighborhoods in the downtown areas, those long-term maintenance. So I think we're probably at an advantage because we are growing so fast, we can do a better job tracking of that infrastructure. A lot of times, while I was there, there were still some water lines that were made out of wood. So literally, that's, when you're talking about infrastructure, you get surprises with some of that. So opportunities for parks, open space, and trails. So The Prudhoe River is an awesome opportunity. Obviously, there's some private land holdings that separate Old Town from the Prudhoe River, but that's, I think a very realistic goal for the community to look on those opportunities to provide access to the river, and the trail. So there are some options to look at. Town does have several properties that it owns in the Old Town area. The Artisan District, a very large parcel that's between Old Town and the Parkway. There's some other smaller lots. You mentioned the firehouse or the old firehouse. Those, we don't know what the options are for those, but maybe one of those in the future could be converted to a smaller pocket park opportunity for public art. There might be some other things that you could do with working with property owners, murals and other things that can create those gathering spaces. And there's some portions of Old Town to the west and northwest that haven't been annexed as part of the community. So if they were ever redeveloped, there might be opportunities, much like the other subdivisions, where they are required to create open space and trails and what have you. So I think there's potential there. It's hard to deal with that in a built-out environment, to carve out those larger open spaces and parks. But I think there's a lot of opportunity both to look at the Prudhoe River as an opportunity to capture, as well as how do we connect to the trails and parks the community currently has in the newer areas to leverage some of that.
Are those potential actually conversations that are being had, or are they potentials that you have in your mind?
Well, I mean, to be honest, I think the properties that were acquired for different purposes. The town hasn't done anything with them. Some of them, they went up for a request for proposal where developers proposed to redo the fire station and the property behind it. That wasn't successful. The investors pulled out. They couldn't make the money work out. I think depending on the location of the parcel, it just depends if that's the right fit and where those opportunities move on. The Artisan property, there is somewhat of a commitment that when the town bought that, there's a deed restriction on that property that says that about 4 acres plus or minus need to be used for a civic space, a park, or I think originally it was envisioned as being the town hall at that time, back in 2004 when it was first planted. But, so there's that expectation of creating some space in that area there. So.
Thank you. Let's take a break from my questions. And are there any questions that are coming? This one, oh, here's one.
Yes. Okay, first of all, I thought it was at a trail side meeting. This is all very interesting, but.
Well, welcome. I can
So
well,
they'll read the question.
Okay. What is going on in the empty buildings on the corner? And I'm not sure which corner.
Probably Signal Tree and Harmony.
Well, I want to know what's going on in the new construction. I see all these empty,
Oh,
maybe restaurants.
right here.
Signed any
Yeah.
contracts for any of those?
And then also what's happened with the property, the corner of Sweatsville.
What happened with the zoo and the carnival there? It's still sitting there. Why aren't you knocking it down? It looks horrible.
Well, those are great questions.
Did they have a contract and then they pulled away?
Yeah, I can tell you what's going on. So first of all, the two buildings that are over here, those are shell. They call it the core shell buildings. So the developer comes in and builds a shell, and then they hope somebody comes in and leases spaces. There are currently three people that are interested in finishing out some spaces in there. There's a Mexican restaurant that's interested in locating on the building along Harmony Road, but they have not yet filed for a building permit. We have 2 building permits that are in process. One is for a hair salon and another one's for a dry cleaner. told there's been some interest for a medical office, and one of them has been looking at, but they're all hearsay. So that's what's going on that property. We adjacent to that, one of the vacant lots, we recently had a concept plan, a very low-level review for a daycare. Some of you may remember this daycare seems to keep trying to find a place and keep bumping around. It was on the north side of Harmony, and then it went away, and there was a hotel. We told the hotel that wasn't going to work out. They went away. So now the daycare is looking at another lot in this subdivision over here. Sweatsville was under contract with the developer for about 3 years. They worked very hard to try to redevelop the site. It's very constrained because of the floodplain from the Poudre River. The majority of the site is within the floodway, which you cannot alter, build structures and what have you. They went through a process where they tried to adjust where those lines are. It's a very long and cumbersome process to get an adjustment to that. But they got approved where all the statutes are, is they could do some development on that side of the river, and the structures were all okay. My understanding, the sweats, part of the requirement of anybody that buys that site, they want them to maintain those structures. So that's one of the strings that are
The
attached.
structures that are standing.
The sculptures, yes. That's my understanding.
Well, yeah,
The zoo.
well, they can make that part of the community.
The zoo, he wants to maintain somebody who buys that, they want to maintain the structures of the zoo.
Okay, that's not true.
Coming here,
That's not true.
So the deal fell through, because now it says property available.
Yeah, so they listed it with another broker, and the other developers no longer has an option.
Okay, I have one more question, which has nothing to do with you guys. Sorry,
I look at the corner of
Denny's.
Denny's and McKinnon, where the dirt is. Why do they not plow the large corner? I'm still walking in the street to get to the mailbox.
I live in a house, Denny's and then McKinnon. Are you familiar with that? Well, in front of my property is this big dirt area that will, I guess, be developed into trees and grass. Well, that whole entire area, the sidewalk, is never plowed. It's ridiculous. They plow where the houses are for sale. They must do it in the middle of the night. I get up in the morning, look out, plowed right up to the doors and the sidewalk, and they stop right there. And right tonight, I get to my mailbox, I had to go into the street, because there's still snow on that sidewalk, which has nothing to do with you guys. I'm sorry.
Well,
I'm venting.
but we can't help. So, our department, we do a code enforcement. The best thing to do, there's on the website, you can just look for Google code complaints or whatever, it's on the main page. If you click on that, you can fill out an online form, and we have an inspector that will go out and deal with that. If it's a metro district, they'll contact the metro district. If it's a property owner, they'll get a notice from the property owner to deal with snow removal, weeds, trash, boats parked in the street, dumpsters blocking the sidewalk. With a lot of new construction, that's probably one of the more common complaints that we get with the builders is they put their dumpsters right on the sidewalk and block them. So we do deal with code enforcement. Yes.
Sorry, is there an interest in a gym in this? I know a gym was here and it's gone. Is there a gym in this building that people go, you know?
You want to talk about the rec center? Do they have is there any new information on the rec center? Did they determine a place of where they're going to fit it?
No, the town council, you can look on the website, the last town council, we had a work session. They did a very high level discussion on the survey results, how the community wants a rec center, and kind of shared the desire of doing that, and roughly how much it would cost.
Parks and Rec Director's number. He'll be able to answer that question.
Okay, great.
Parks and Rec's gonna be released. That's your rec.
Oh, I thought it was only.
File it.
Yeah,
Exactly what-
yeah, I honestly thought it was gonna be there too.
Oh,
But
One more
Justin,
interesting.
yeah, but, no, that's for the Parks and Rec, so you can, if you wanna talk about the rec center. But just so you know, since you're brand new to the neighborhood, you can go to Windsor Rec Center. They have a pretty good program, and a lot of our people
I
do
know
go
where
there.
it's 24-hour fitness.
Okay.
So I'm good.
Yeah,
Right.
and just so you know, a lot of the neighborhood ladies go over to Windsor.
Right. But there is a charge.
It's not very much.
Okay,
Sorry,
thanks for
off
asking
topic.
those questions. We've heard about forthcoming update Timnath's comprehensive plan. Good. More details about that? When will this happen? What's the process entailing? How broad is the review?
So, we just, council just approved the contract. It's the same firm that's helping to do our parks plans, so very done. It's a different team. There are local consultants that they brought as part of their team. We had 4 firms that put out a proposal. We put out a request saying, hey, we want to update our comprehensive plan, listed some of the criteria. The state has some new requirements that our comprehensive plan has to meet, so that's one of the reasons why we need to do it. One of them's dealing with tourism, one of them's dealing with housing. I think water is another one that we need to be more mindful of our comprehensive plan. Why does that matter? Well, if we were to ever get a grant or funding through the Department of Local Governments, sometimes with Public Works, sometimes there's federal dollars involved with transportation. We've got to make sure all our plans are kind of in line with state requirements, so it's very important that our comprehensive plan is consistent with some of those requirements with that. The vision, Timnath is growing very quickly, and so even though we just updated the last one, I believe in 2016 or 2020, thanks Steve, we're kind of ready to have it done, be done again. I mean, the community's grown that much, we're dealing with some different challenges with growth and we're in a very large growth management area. So even though the corporate boundaries of the town are fairly small, there's some spiders going up north. But our area is quite large, so anytime the development comes within our growth management area, we coordinate with Larimer County. And part of that is just, the first ask is, does the town want to annex that property? And then it gets into how far away it is, does Public Works want to take over maintaining those roads? If we say no, we still want to make sure that those developments are kind of consistent with our vision. Sometimes they're not, so it's really important to make sure that we have a clear vision on these areas outside our corporate boundaries. So, things that we can start preserving ag land. I heard that the other night in the Planning Commission is there's some concern about how we preserve some of our agricultural land and still encourage some right-sized, appropriate development as the town continues to grow. So that's.
What is the overall vision?
Well, right now we're working on the 2020 vision, and there's multiple chapters. There's one actually on Old Town that identifies some goals that we're trying to fulfill.
Is it to be a quaint, small,
Well, I think that's the
under a
vision.
certain number of people, or?
Well, that's I think the challenge. The old plan kind of has that quaint feel, but when we were doing things like Ladera, it's kind of out of scale of what our old comprehensive plan is. We are dealing with very large subdivisions being built, being proposed. Our population, depending which number you look at, we're 8,000 to 11,000, depending on where we are right now. We're continuing to grow very quickly. So it's just best practice to make sure that we check in with the community to make sure that we're consistent with that. And the reason why that's very important is when we update our land use code, the 500-page book that you're all going to go read after tonight, right? we want to make sure that code is based on our comprehensive plan. So when we update the code, that gives us the direction to turn left or turn right or keep going forward. And so that's why it's really important that our comprehensive plan is relevant and up to date, so that when we make those changes to our zoning ordinance, we have a basis for those decisions.
Do they have a top population they don't want to exceed?
There's not really, I mean, when you look how big our growth management area is, there's not really a number, it just projects out growth. I think that we just want to grow where we want to grow, not grow where we don't want to grow. I think is how I phrase that. I don't think the town's current comprehensive plan or future ones, like, we don't want any more growth, we're done. But I think we want to be smart about where and how we grow.
Yeah, Scott, you said at the outset that obviously sales tax revenue is a big portion of the town's budget and a major economic driver. And clearly, where the majority of that comes from is, Harmony I-25 developments with Costco and Walmart. And that will only grow with the Ytterock development. So I think it poses a challenge for both you and Justin, because that's only going to add to the traffic congestion that already exists and is likely to get worse. How are you going to be able to manage that as additional development takes place in that area?
Yeah, yeah, it starts at the big picture at the 30,000-foot level. Again, we work with the North Front Range MPO, and we model the traffic. So it's not only Timnath, because a lot, the Timnath residents really don't go, some go to Costco, but we did some software that looked at where people come and go to Costco. They were coming from Wyoming and all over the place. So it's a big regional draw. So we have to incorporate that. So we work with the North Front Range MPO planning organization. So when we do our transportation plans, that predicts out with all the development, all the other towns, when they come into our regional commercial spots. And so we project that out at least 20 years. So that gives us a baseline, like kind of how big do our roads need to be, what roads do we need, how many arterials, collectors that feed into the arterials. So that gives us the baseline. And then as development comes in, they have to provide what's called the traffic impact study. So at that time, we look at that, make sure we're still in the plan, it still matches what the master plan is going to be. Usually we have them do like what's called a short-term analysis, like when they're built out, how much of an impact are they going to have on the roads? Do they have to provide a signal? Do they have to do some lane widening and that kind of stuff? So those are requirements that we've been put on the developer to do. And some of the bigger stuff, we do get with some fees. So each of the building permits do have fees assessed with them based on that plan I was talking about. So we know, like Harmony, we're going to need to be 6 lanes. It's going to cost us X million of dollars. We put that into some kind of a fee study that we just did recently. And so we also get fees from those developments that we can come back and then use that money when that's needed, like when we do need to do 6 lanes. But you do, bring a good point is with Colorado, it is sales tax, it's kind of the money that we generate. And Timnath was they had it like a lot of commercial, a lot of retail, a lot of sales tax, but not a lot of housing. So it did help with the funding, where a lot of places like Loveland was more of a bedroom community because housing does cost a little bit more than the services provided. So as we get these new subdivisions, more police services, it is going to be a challenge. So the money that we are getting now is going to be probably less per population. So that's something that we're definitely looking at, but it's one of those things where you just have to keep making sure that balance, and that's where kind of planning helps out. Where does that balance, that mix, to make sure that we're getting the income to provide for the different services, snow plowing, street maintenance, road widening, and those kinds of things. So it kind of works together, but hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, no, it does. I think a follow-up might be, do you see any negative impacts from the increased development in that particular obviously you've got, and I don't know the name of the property, but the gravel, what is it? Yeah. You've got huge trucks coming off of that, in addition to just the traffic coming into Costco and Walmart.
And then you're
Yes.
in and out. And
Yeah. At some point, will it negatively impact the revenues that are generated from those, because people are avoiding going somewhere else to do their shopping because the congestion is so bad?
Well, I would say I think the planning for the transportation aspect, at least right now, is fairly oversized for what's currently there. So there's a lot of potential for, at least in the Ladera area, to absorb a lot of that demand. Harmony is going to be a challenge. I mean, that's the one area that's, going back to the Swiss property, that's one of the biggest challenges, that intersection right there. We get a lot of complaints from the Walmart kind of roundabout and dealing with that. What I think will happen over time as Ladera builds out and you get different users that might, we're seeing, kind of peak growth of two of the larger big box. That's probably going to plateau over time. As other users come out, that might distribute out a little bit more. So, we had an analysis done, I believe, a few years ago on the tax revenue and, is it going to hit a financial cliff? I think the result of the study that the town looked at is no, it won't. Right now, again, that area is the largest tax revenue generator for the community, but as it continues to add more revenue over time, some of that revenue is being cycled off as part of the business improvement district or a rebate from the taxes. They have kind of a horizon of when that would end. But they are kind of, development's kind of paying its way, at least with the Ladera in that aspect. So I think the long-term forecast should be okay as far as financial ability to manage that part of the community.
I have a question. There's basically two ways to get from Fort Collins to Timnath. That's Harmony and Ketcher. Ketcher and CR5 is accident waiting to happen. I purposely avoid that and go down towards Harmony, turn off the Harmony before. Is any complaints about that, putting a blinking light or even a traffic light? Are you aware what's going on at that road? You're like looking left and right and pulling out into a nightmare.
Yeah, so that is actually one of the requirements Ladera is doing, they were required to do, so actually right now, I think they're out there constructing, or they put what's the foundation on there, so that'll be constructed this spring, so that will be a traffic light there. A traffic light will be put there this spring, so it's actually being built as we speak.
Perfect, okay, one more question. What is going on behind Costco? What is being built? Is anything going on? I know you messed up the Top Golf, I really wanted that badly.
I did not mess up.
Have you seen the Gold Eagles? I'm sorry, Top Golf was a bad choice here.
So that's the Ladera project that they were referring to, is that whole area stretching to the gravel pit, is what they were referring to when they say the Ladera project.
What is
It's
going
a
on?
development.
Any contracts?
It's a whole development. It's like, if you go to the community page, it's retail, it's loft apartments, right?
Really? That's going to go in?
Yeah, it's a whole,
So the gravel pit, 2 years? They've got a timeline when they're shutting the facility down, the asphalt and gravel. It's gonna be reclamated, there's gonna be a big lake. There will be some mixed-use development they're envisioning around there, which will include maybe some commercial on the first floor, office or residential above, they don't know. There's a little area to the east of the lake where they've identified residential use. Right now, the activity we're seeing with Ladera is around the lots west of Costco. So there's a barbecue joint, Dutch Brothers, coffee.
shop, I heard.
There's a credit union currently being built right now underneath the cell tower. There's In-N-Out hamburger just got approved, so they'll be coming in
gonna happen someday?
I mean, any project that gets approved for site plan may never come to fruition, and that's very common in a lot of places. The financing doesn't work out, they sell it off to somebody, you know. But right now, that's, you know, until you see construction equipment, that's about the only time you know it's really gonna happen. So,
Okay, thank you.
but the Ladera people are constantly bringing stuff forward, trying to pull in some other users in the area. So we're anticipating a couple more projects going through their pretty quick order, and they're really starting to look at, once the gravel pit moves away, what's going to happen in the rest of the city. So there's a hotel that was proposed, there's a storage unit, you know, a 3-story. Other fitness facilities. There's a fitness, Lifetime Fitness is looking at a lot down there, so there's a lot of interest.
We talked for a minute there about traffic, roads. We know that the southern entrance to Old Town is slated to be closed off. Do we have an anticipation for when that's going to happen? And in conjunction with that, we talked earlier about Old Town infrastructure and some of the Main Street there. Now that really 4th Avenue is going to become the main drag into Old Town, is there any anticipated planning on how to help foster economic development there to draw people in, not they're bypassing this section?
Yeah, so to answer your first question on the schedule, so we're working with the railroad across the course of it, also winter set in. So we're very close on the south part of the Parkway project, south of the river, by the railroad tracks. And then you saw some of the prep work. So this spring, again, working with the railroad, there's never any guarantees, but I don't know, one of my engineers has been on them like every couple weeks, kind of making sure they're still have it on the radar. Is this spring they'll build the top lift, do their crossing, railroad crossing there on the Parkway, and then also do like a temporary connection to Harmony. And so that would block off, like, it'd be like a cul-de-sac on Main Street. There's a couple areas that people could still get downtown. I think 2nd Street, 4th Street, and then also West Grove. And I can't remember, there's another street that may be restricted and may not be like full moving in. So there will be the opportunity. So really what that will provide is an extra road. It's not necessarily closing Main Street. It does kind of make it a little bit different as you're coming in. So the purpose of that is more of the truck traffic or the people that don't want to stop in Old Town. It kind of lets them go around it. But anybody that still wants to go to Old Town, it's not like these big bypasses that's way out of town. It's just a couple of blocks. So if people wanted to go to down Old Town for some reason, they would still be able to do that. It's not very far, so 4th Street would be one of those. What that also does is provides a little bit more safer, opens it up more for a multimodal, like bicycle and pedestrian friendly. So you not only have cars that maybe people can get downtown different ways or feel more comfortable with that. So that's kind of the plan for there. So the only businesses that really are affected by, would be affected, like if you were to put like a coffee shop, drive-through coffee shop, that business probably would be impacted by doing that extra road where you have to go around. But most other businesses, it's just a few blocks away. It should not, studies have shown this, it does not really impact the town, especially if they have a destination they want to get to, especially if it's just a couple of blocks away. All it does is just a through traffic. It gives it a different area that they can go by. And it gives you a better grid system and kind of distributes traffic, so it makes it a little bit better for everybody. It distributes traffic so you don't have any congestion in any area. The other thing that it provides an opportunity, so was at an AI conference in San Jose, and during COVID on some of their downtown streets, they wanted to have businesses like the seating for different businesses. They closed off some of the main streets. What they found is they actually got more business by closing them off. And actually just maybe it was a few months ago, actually council, because the businesses wanted it, they petitioned and said, let's just leave it closed, let's not reopen it. So the businesses said, we do a lot better with it, especially for more bicycle pedestrian friendly, if it's close, people can walk and bike down there. So what I think it does provide is for different types of things too, for Main Street. I know this was in Loveland, there was a lot of requests in some of the communities, even in Sterling, but maybe be able to close some of those streets to have events, like maybe the businesses get together, have like a Friday evening sale or something like that. So this, by allowing the traffic to go around, this does, I think, provide an opportunity for downtown, Old Town, to be able to do those types of things, maybe get together and do like a weekend shopping or something like that. Some kind of an atmosphere to get families downtown and stuff like that. So that's kind of kind of the vision that I think potentially could be.
That's not a vision. That's like, in my estimation, as a longtime downtown Timnath resident, for one, that's a long way around the block to basically say that you're closing off continuity, you're closing Main Street. It's now continuous for a long stretch. You're bypassing downtown via a parkway that was supposed to be built at Three Bells Parkway. That's why we call it Three Bells Parkway a parkway. And that's why it picks up at Kechter. But that would have went too close to the Harmony Club. And so instead we put a lake with a dock there. I think that what we need to do if we want a downtown core that thrives, that has interesting people and interesting businesses, we need to covet it, and we need to look at what we have, and we need to look at what was created for you to now implement. Because there was no public dialogue on Main Street closure. This was basically a community of 450 people when I moved here 15 years ago. 450 people. And they saw a tsunami of growth. There was a limited amount of people that were landholders here, and they created a haven for metro districts at the expense of downtown. We have an augmentation pond where once was to be open space. We have no businesses downtown thriving, and we're trying to figure out how to create a sense of energy in downtown core. Well, we've created ultimately a ribbon called a bypass or a parkway in a convenient location for the Landings Metro District to come in and spend $1 bazillion. But my wells are dry as a result of that. There's been a completely hostile environment towards any kind of proposal that many people have brought forward over the last decade and a half. And so when I hear you say, and especially coming from Loveland, because I own the Christian Scientist building downtown Loveland. I've done development work in downtown Loveland. It suffers the fate today that Timnath will suffer unless people own the fact that, one, we're never going to gain revenue. We're never going to get a mom and pop coffee shop that's going to gain Costco revenue. But there has to be a level of interest in our downtown core. It says it all over the comprehensive plan that people want a downtown core. So let's look at the parkway and the fact there's no pedestrian crossing. Let's look at 4th Street that just got built that looks like somebody built it on an Etch-a-Sketch. We have some real problems, but we can't solve them if we don't own how we got here. And we got here by being a host for metro districts.
So let me
I'm just trying to give the dialogue some honesty, John.
And knowing that you guys have only been here a year, so you were part of those conversations, right, when those comprehensive plans were built. 11 months, sorry. Yeah,
That's
okay.
very good.
But do you want to offer a response to Steve's concerns?
I want to understand the road. I want to understand how you're trying to convince us that it creates connectivity, that there's some kind of dialogue, that the parkway is safe, because you were never counting, your predecessor was never counting on anybody crossing that road. That's called redlining in a number of areas where I'm familiar. I think that we need to work with what was a mistake.
Let's let them respond if they like.
Yeah, so, yeah, thanks for sharing your concerns. Definitely I could see, especially with your history here and seeing, with all these changes, have a big concern on this. So really the road service with development. So what really with downtowns is what your destinations are. So the key is to provide something downtown that people want to get there. So the roads kind of service that. So really we're going to provide an extra road to be able to get people downtown. So even if there's maybe one block that blocks off, you still have a lot of connectivity. So the roads would service whatever development. So I think your concern is maybe not necessarily the roads, but how do you get people downtown? I think it sounds like more of your concern.
I think it's the process of the relationship that downtown, the 150 years of history, the role that we've played as a community the last 10 years. We have been the host for metro districts that have now encircled us, encased us with a parkway, and we're in many ways marooned and really quite neglected. I'm glad now that we have sewer service. Up until 8 years ago, we didn't have sewer service. We watered our lawns with our well water that was being infiltrated by raw sewage. That's why we have sewer systems. So I just want an honest dialogue about the vision that you have with a level of commitment that really makes sense to people. That's what I want.
Yeah, and I was going to say, sometimes you just need to agree to disagree. So again, I understand your point, but again, time will tell. As we build the connections, we'll be able to test and see. But my experience has shown with those extra roads, it does not affect, unless it was like a major bypass or something like that. But we'll observe it and look at it. And then as far as pedestrian safety crossing, we are doing that. We just adopted our first bicycle pedestrian PED crossing guidelines. So that gives us a guideline that we built for the town that we're able to consistently provide for those. So we'll have what's called a rectangular flashing beacon on 4th Street that will go in. That'll be part of the improvements to be able to provide that safe, connection across. And the other thing we want to do in conjunction with the Old Town Steering Committee, we wanted to wait and see what comes out with that, is to relook at, 4th Street, because it is going to be a little bit different, right? So there are going to be trucks, and there are going to be people that go through there. So again, we want to make it multimodal, so maybe we could do some different striping for bicycles or, pedestrian type improvements. Also safe crossings, like one of the big things we want to look at is even at, 4th Street and Kerr, we want to take a look at that, make sure that, we have safety there, and also crosswalks. There's been a lot of demand for crosswalks in downtown, so I think that provides us the opportunity to meet our guidelines. So that was another project we're going to do, is kind of the repurpose of what traffic's going to be downtown. You'll still have traffic there. Again, like I said, you just won't have the traffic that goes by or the truck traffic that probably wouldn't contribute to the downtown anyway.
Well, no, I think obviously, downtown is not the same as right there. I don't think anybody envisioned a big box coming downtown. Correct me if I'm wrong, Steve, I don't think that was the vision of Old Town when you arrived. The challenge with any downtown area is how do you get those smaller mom and pop shops, make them work? How do you allow them to retrofit existing structures? That's, some people can view that as gentrification, where you're converting a residential house into commercial. There's challenges in codes and compliance. So there's things that the town can do to help maybe lessen some of that burden for some of the building codes, with the zoning, where it is in Old Town and how we can change those encourage some of those smaller businesses that are more appropriate for downtown, where we can delineate areas that are more appropriate for residential. So my understanding generally is north of the tracks, generally people are more willing or accepting to more business type activity, and south of the tracks tends to be more residential. Again, that's just my very general, broad understanding. 4th Street, there's a lot of opportunity looking at how will be the more common way to go into downtown, and how can we restructure that corridor to be more receptive to those types of uses coming in. And so those are things we can do with the comprehensive plan, change our land use codes, maybe start looking at incentives. The current incentive program that the town has right now is really focused on rebates from your building permits, so it's not really a very strong, my opinion would be that's not really a strong tool to renovate an existing structure. It's kind of set up more for new construction. So there's things that you can also, communities also do that are small for existing structures, like facade improvements. I mentioned murals. There's other things that don't necessarily take a lot of money that can start generating that interest and draw people into Old Town. It's going to take time. It's not going to happen very quickly. And I think, again, we as a community need to work together to look at those challenges and opportunities in the Old Town area, where we can, hey, recognize there's change coming, and how are we going to manage that and look towards the future with that. And so I think tend to see that
there's an environment of people that want to do improvements. We want to contribute to what we believe, and many people before this, which is of a downtown core that had walkability, that you could ride your bike to and from, that had connectivity, bike paths. We're like I said, somewhat marooned, but in an environment of uncertainty, nothing happens. And I do this frequently, actually, and in towns like, I've been working recently in Steamboat Springs. But we need a field that's level, and we need to know who the interested people are in the downtown core that are even interested in talking, if they'll even come out of the woodwork. Those are the important people, because we can plan and vision, and you guys are not in the business of being in business. But I'm kind of in that business of trying to say, how can we create what I've been hearing people want? And I'd like to feel like there's an interest by a lot of people, but it's challenging because Parks and Recs is a feel good. And this is kind of a little bit of a jagged edge right now that will become more so as people say, as they do to me, what's going on down here? So that's been happening for 15 years of what's going on down here, and I'm still asking that question, just to new people. And I'm glad you're here. I'm glad Together for Timnath does what they do, because it does give a chance to express this. I wish there were more people, of course, always frustrating. They show up for other things down there. You can have a random meeting and you'll get 50 people from Old Town. You have an informative meeting and you get, I don't know how many people live downtown. You. Yeah,
I have a related question, if I could, Jonathan. Justin, you mentioned people will come off the Parkway if downtown is seen as a destination. But that's not going to happen if the town doesn't invest itself in making it a destination. And without staff dedicated to doing that, how's that ever going to happen? So maybe update us on what the plan is to hire economic development staff.
Oh, that's probably the closest.
So council was here, we set aside some money to put towards that effort, and that's what the 2025 budget was, is to allocate some money towards economic development. My department, I have $100,000 in my budget to go towards that economic incentive package, or if you were to get a building permit and meet the criteria, you get a little rebate back on your building permit fees that the town charges. There really isn't a direction in that. One of the goals, kind of circling back to the comprehensive plan, is one of the goals of updating our comprehensive plan is really to start putting a framework together with what is our economic development strategy. There really isn't one for the town. Some places have it. It's like, are we going to be, you look at Silicon Valley, we're going to be targeting IT, computer, whatever. Other places are medical, others do whatever. So that probably is not the vision for Timnath, but we need to have some vision on what our economic strategy is, other than we're just going to hand out money to anybody that comes knocking at the door. Ladera is privately held land. They have their own economic machine to market and develop that site. When I go back to Bloomington and what our economic and sustainable development department, what their role was, really focused more on the smaller businesses, retention and retain businesses. How do you keep them there? It's really hard to draw new businesses in. Bloomington did some other things with technology and incubator space that's starting to come along, and it took some help from the state. And that had a vision of what is that economic development. The spin-offs from that, you got a shared space for people to park their computers or whatever, and they have a little cool space that you can all go to and have a party, but it's not really a driver of a coffee shop and a nice restaurant, right? So, I mean, that's part of the challenge of Timnath, at least in my opinion, is there isn't that vision or strategy of what is our economic development. What it appears right now is it's all being driven by that tax revenue of the big box stores.
I would suggest that your vision be that you keep your residents' money within Timnath and have them spend locally, so that we're not going to Windsor to go grocery shopping. So we're not going to Windsor or Fort Collins to go out to dinner. I'm sorry, I do like to buy alcohol, but that Timnath beverage is so outrageously priced, I'm not gonna buy there. But I'm saying that's what you need is those mom and pop stops to keep your residents spending their money here, because then you have the best of both worlds. You have the corridor, the 25 corridor, and you get that sales money, but then you also keep your residents to generate business within. Just a thought, I mean.
No, and I think that's a very common theme with economic development.
Right, and.
The goal is trying to retain keep your dollars local, right?
Well, I mean, like I know Riverbend, I was out when you had, the Riverbend guys speak. And there was no tax incentive for him to build that. He did it all. I would like to see Timnath provide tax incentives and get CDBGs and stuff like that. You have to do in-kind matches. So where's your in-kind match for new business? And then you can get some federal funding. Just a thought.
Not right now.
I'm sorry, Pastor, I loved your Christmas Eve service.
Oh, well,
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for coming.
Where are we talking?
This is
That was a
my
mic drop, right?
Yeah, that was. But this is my personal ad. This is how I've been ending every forum, so it's mine is mine. I want to know what you think of this. So I've been reading this quote. Somebody wrote, "Place matters. No one lives in a vacuum, disembodied or isolated from the logic necessity. Existence requires location. Life has geography. Our contexts of land and culture matter for shaping who we are and who we might become." So from the perspective of public works and planning, how can your departments and your roles help us continue to recall and continue to create a sense of place and identity that isn't just the eye of
Jonathan, that's a quote out of Planning 101. I mean, that's the planning tagline, making great communities, right? And so, that obviously the challenge is you have these aspirational goals, and then reality sinks in, and how do you pay for it? How do you make it work out? I am a firm believer that you need to have those aspirational goals. That's what gets people excited. It's challenging, and it takes time, and it creates friction, but if you don't have those aspirational goals, then you don't end up with anything special. You don't end up with communities that people are proud of and things that they work towards. So I do think Timnath does have some good vision and roots about what it wants to be, I guess. It's taking some time. My opinion in my short time here is I do think we have a lot of really good ingredients. It's just going to take some time to kind of make that happen. And so I'm looking forward to updating our comprehensive plan to help further that vision and identify some of those priorities and solidify it. One of the things that I think a missed opportunity that I hope we can kind of flush out with the comprehensive plan is a little bit of, I mentioned a little bit about the agricultural aspect, open space. I know Tom talked a little bit about the pros plan, like there really isn't any vision about preservation of open space, not necessarily just for wildlife or the corridor, but just even view sheds and what have you. And then where do we channel that growth? So that we can have a vibrant old town, a vibrant kind of commercial area on I-25. So it takes time, but I do think, again, I think we have a lot of the really good ingredients in place, and I think there's a lot of base to build on.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Place matters. And so as public works, what we try to do is support that, be the backbone to help, with a body, we want to make sure we're the spine, be able to help with whatever, the town needs, which other departments do as far as the vision, what development, economic development. We want to make sure the roads are safe, that we provide a way to get there safely and also to be able to maintain it, so like with stones and stuff like that. So again, place matters. We just want to be kind of in the background and help support that in whichever way that is.
Well, thank you. Cool. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. I wish we could have had money here.
Yes.
It's a tough draw for community development.
Well, public works too is a tough job. We don't have to bells and whistles like Mark.